major breaking news. The Supreme Court just ruled that a controversial ban on TikTok may take effect on Sunday. The ruling putting the spotlight on President-elect Donald Trump. And I just spoke to him on the phone. It was a brief conversation. And this was his first reaction. I was actually telling him about how the Supreme Court ruled. And he told me, quote, in response, "It ultimately goes up to me, so you're going to see what I'm going to do. Congress has given me the decision, so I'll be making the decision." So we're going to talk to our panel about that, because it's not so simple, although, of course, he will have some options available to him. So before we get to that, I want to go straight to Paula to break down this ruling for us, Paula.
Yeah, easily the biggest decision out of the court so far this term. And here the justices allowing this ban on the popular app TikTok to go forward amid bipartisan concerns about the national security risk posed by this app. Now, specifically, the justices were looking at a law passed last April by Congress with broad bipartisan support that said the app would be banned unless it was sold from its parent company, ByteDance, because the concern is that ByteDance has obligations and allegiances to the Chinese government. And the specific national security concern is that this app is collecting enormous amounts of data on Americans, and that data could be used or manipulated in a crisis. Now, in its decision, the court said that even TikTok, quote, did not dispute that the government has an important and well-grounded interest in preventing China from collecting the personal data of tens of millions of U.S. TikTok users. Nor could they. The platform collects extensive personal information from and about its users. Now, Justice Gorsuch wrote, quote, "Speaking with and in favor of a foreign adversary is one thing. Allowing a foreign adversary to spy on Americans is another." Now, TikTok had argued that this ban is a violation of the First Amendment. As we know, nearly 200 million Americans use this app to express themselves, everything from the news to cat videos to the latest dance craze. But the justices appeared skeptical of that argument. And in their decision today, they said, look, this is very specific. We're talking about an app that collects an enormous amount of data for a foreign adversary. So they said that even though First Amendment protections are usually given enormous deference, here they're issuing this narrow ruling. So legally, what could happen next? Well, it kind of falls to President-elect Trump if he is able to show that there are serious good faith negotiations underway to sell TikTok. This ban could be paused, but the Supreme Court today also could have paused this and given him more time to engage in those negotiations, and the court chose not to do that. Pamela?
Yeah, that's certainly notable. I want to bring Joan in because it's interesting. You know, Donald Trump was once spearheading the effort to ban TikTok, and then he's had this reversal. He wants to save it, right? The justices actually noted that he once tried to ban it.
They did, right at the top of the opinion. In a couple different instances, the justices referred to the fact that in August of 2020, Donald Trump had actually issued an executive order against TikTok. And it also noted that he had expressed concerns for the vast swaths of information that TikTok collects on American users. And that goes to the justices' grounds. Just to remind everyone what the federal government had argued here. Two grounds. They argued two grounds. One is all the data that's collected, the amassing of data from 170 million users. But then they also argued that TikTok not only had that data to use for blackmail or espionage, but also would be in a position to covertly manipulate messages, different kinds of propaganda. The justices actually set aside the second reasoning. They decided we're not going to look at that one because it was enough for them to find that the threat to national security was in the data collection. And we kind of saw this coming because during oral arguments, several of the justices talked about information that could be collected now on young people who down the road, 10, 15 years from now, come into more important positions and then could be vulnerable to what had been collected on them. And just the risk of not just today, that data collection, but down the road, what Beijing could potentially do to it. And that was the crux of their reasoning today, Pam.
And so now you have Donald Trump, who told me on the phone this morning that, look, the decision is ultimately up to me. Congress has given me the decision to do it. Now, we know the law allows this 90-day extension if there are actual, real, tangible negotiations happening. But ByteDance has said it doesn't want to sell TikTok. And so there's this looming question of what's going to happen Sunday when this ban takes place. And between that time and when Donald Trump takes office Monday officially, and what options are available to him?
Yeah, I'm curious what he's being advised as far as how much discretion he has. I don't think this law, as it was passed and as President Biden signed it, really gives the president-elect, future President Trump, a whole lot of flexibility in terms of being able to put the brakes on it once it goes into effect. There's a couple different options he has available. One, he could quickly see if he can put together a buyer group, and that is, again, if ByteDance and TikTok are willing to sell it, they have the option to just shut down their own service. They don't actually have to be bought, even if a buying group was put together. The other potential option that President-elect Trump might be thinking through with his team is whether or not he issues an executive order that directs the Attorney General not to enforce the law. In other words, not to conduct the investigations that the act calls for. But the law actually applies to the companies that provide access to the app. So it's the companies that provide the app stores that people download it from. And that puts those companies, if he were to say, look, this law is in place, but I'm just not going to enforce it, go ahead companies and still go ahead and provide access to it, that puts the companies in a really, really difficult place because they're in a position then of potentially not complying with the law and risking huge fines.
Especially for Sunday when he's not officially president.
Well,
right?
he can't do anything before
right.
Sunday. We only have one president at a time.
Exactly, and they've made clear, the Biden White House has made clear, look, it's the end of our term.
They're going to let it go. So the question would be, once President Trump steps into office, what does he do then? And it's not so simple. The law doesn't give him a whole lot of flexibility.
I want to go to Elena Treen. Elena, when I spoke to President-elect Trump this morning, he talked about his call with President Xi of China. And, you know, he said it was a great call, and they talked about TikTok, and they talked about several other issues. But that is notable because really the center of concern here that is also reflected in the Supreme Court opinion is about China, you know, taking Americans' data and spying on Americans. So you have to wonder what really went on in that conversation.
No, exactly. And I'd also keep in mind as well that there's many Republicans in Congress who voted for this bill. I mean, it was a bipartisan bill that Congress approved last year to ban TikTok by January 19th. And there's many Republicans who think that this ban needs to move forward despite what Donald Trump is saying. Look, I'd also remind you that Donald Trump himself, back in 2020, before he departed office for his first term, wanted a ban on TikTok. It's actually something that the Supreme Court cited in its decision today, that he felt that there were national security concerns about a Chinese-owned company owning TikTok. Of course, now we are seeing really the stunning reversal from him. A lot of this is, and we've heard this from Donald Trump directly in his own words, he believes that he's warmed to TikTok because so many of users in this country, you know, there's tens of millions of Americans who use TikTok on a daily basis. Some of them voted for him because they saw a lot of his campaign through the app and by using the app. Now, we also know a couple things. Not only did he talk to Xi Jinping this morning, but he has been in regular contact as well with TikTok CEO Shou Chew. He's talked to him on the phone. We also know he met with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago last month, and Chew is going to be at the inauguration on Monday. We also know that Xi Jinping is sending one of their top officials from the Chinese Communist Party to the inauguration as well, something they are doing for the first time. All to say, this relationship, Donald Trump's relationship with the CEO of TikTok, but also Xi Jinping, is definitely one of those complicating matters in all of this. Even though Donald Trump has, you know, really said that he wants to take a hardline policy on China, he also has Marco Rubio, if he is confirmed to be his Secretary of State, someone who is very much a hawk on China. He's actually sanctioned by Beijing. All of this is weighing into this decision. But I think the key thing is what Donald Trump is going to do once he is in office. And we do know that he is weighing an executive order to potentially push pause on this ban to see if they can find some sort of agreement with TikTok. You know, I'm told in a short amount of time, maybe 60 to 90 days to put pause on this so they can try to find some sort of negotiation. So all of this is under consideration. But again, we will not know until Donald Trump officially makes that move once he is in office.